Hello quilty friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life. Anywhere that you can find me on the web is listed down in the description box below, including weekly exclusive content over on my Patreon page. Now last week I shared with you my Tilda Merry Little Christmas project and that is going very well. You can probably still see all of my blocks that are left to be sewn here on the side. Lots of you said you either had the collection or you wished you had bought the collection because it sold out so fast. Lots of people are now left with fussy cut fat quarters or pieces of fabric that look like this. So if you are with me and you have a fat quarter piece of this, you know, beautiful show-stopping print, this video is going to be for you. We're going to turn these scraps into something beautiful. I also saved my scraps throughout the project, so it's just small pieces. Oh, here's another bit of the panel that I folded this one up nice and neat. Just little, all sorts, sort of 2 inches or more, and then I've got some of the fat quarters left, but they're only skinny little pieces. So depending on how much scraps you have left, you might need to add a little bit more to it. You've obviously seen the thumbnail and know that it's a Christmas stocking. So I also bought some fabric to go as the backing of the stocking that goes really nicely with the collection. It's just not Tilda. I couldn't get yardage of this collection. So this goes really nicely and it's got stockings on there. So this is Blank Quilting Corp, Glad Tidings We Bring. And it's just a lovely, lovely dusky Christmas green. I really like that. So that's going to be the back of my stocking. But first of all, we're going to make the front patchwork panel. Of course, you can do this with any shape that you like, but it's brilliant if you've still got little bits left on the panel that you can fussy cut. Like I couldn't have got a star out of the centre of Santa there. Some of the objects were hard to fussy cut, like the Christmas stocking, because whatever was next to it was better than the Christmas stocking. I also found the duck to be very hard to fussy cut. You had to sacrifice the thing that was next to it, which was better than the duck. I can't find one, and oh, in fact duck's cut off anyway, but the reindeer was next to it, so he had bigger real estate to offer. And then you got the gorgeous dogs. It was just an absolutely beautiful collection. So on this video I'm going to bring you along making the stocking. I'll give you full details so that you can make your own, but if you would like to get your hands on this very stocking that I'm going to be making, I'm going to be making it for something very special over on my Instagram page. So don't forget to go over there, hit the follow button and turn on the notifications, and stay tuned for something very exciting. Well, now it's probably going to be a good few weeks because it's not coming until December, so I've got a little while to wait, but I'll see you over there when it does happen. Right, I now need to go through this fabric and decide what size hexagon will be best. So I've got this hexagon template set from So Easy. I think a few are missing, they're probably in project boxes, but it's an acrylic template. You can draw the 1/4 inch seam on through the little dots if you wanted to, but these are great because you get a whole stack from 1 inch. I think I probably got one smaller than that, all the way up to 3 inch. I definitely know the 2 inch and the 2.5 are somewhere else. But I've also got these templates, so I'm going to hand piece my hexagons rather than English paper piece. These type of window templates are really good for hand piecing. It's easy to draw the line inside. A lovely lady recently asked me at a show where you can find these. I totally had a memory blank. You can get these from Clover. They're available on Amazon, so I'll leave the link for them, but I think I bought them both from the Cotton Patch. You are limited on the sizing and they are much thinner. They're probably like 1/8 of an inch, whereas your acrylic ones are usually 1/4 of an inch. So what I usually do is get the matching thicker one for my cutting, and then I just lay this one over the top for drawing my lines. So it's kind of a 2-in-1. You could cut around these, they just wouldn't last as long. So this one in here is a finished size of 1 1/4 inch. And I think that should work. With With the stocking, you don't want to do the pieces too big because you won't have as many hexagons on the patchwork piece, so it probably wouldn't look as good. I wouldn't go bigger than maybe 1.75 inches, maybe 2 inches at a push. I wouldn't go bigger than that because you'll just lose the patchwork element. So this is going to work really nicely. It's not going to work on this example, but let's switch the camera. So all I'll do is just a quick check. That would go nicely, you know, if there wasn't a piece cut out. Let's have a look. Let's make sure I've actually got some that will work. That's too small. Okay, Santa is definitely going to work. Here's a nice big one. So that is giving me a nice bit of room around Santa's head as well. So that's a definite there. I think the gingerbread house as well, that will work really nicely. I could offset it to the side or put it straight in the middle. The Christmas stocking works nicely as well. The nutcracker, it's okay if I have him off to the side. It's a nice scrappy project. We've got the stocking again. The drum, perfect. The polar bear, can't really get the polar bear on without cutting his head off, but we've got Santa again. Reindeer. I'll then cut out various pieces of these blenders as well. To make our template and work out how many hexagons we need, we're just going to take a regular stocking that you already have, and this will then be the shape of your template. So later we're going to trace this, add a bit of seam allowance, but for now all I'm going to do is lay my hexagons over, and when I do so I want to make sure that they go over the edge first, 1/4 inch over the edge on each side, because if I'd have put that there, I've then got to fill that in with another hexagon. So start it off hanging over by 1/4 inch. And then if you can, try and overlap them by 1/4 inch as well. It won't be 100% accurate, but it will give you more of a feel for how many we're going to need. So they don't need to be, you know, in any particular order. We're just trying to judge here how many. So you see here, that's unavoidable a lot of the time. You need to just sew a hexagon on there just to cover a small piece. Same, might be able to budge that down there, so we don't need to worry about that. I'll bring the whole panel down. I think I've cut more than enough. I also have a few of these left over, so I'll be able to intersperse them and fill in any gaps, because when you sew them together, obviously it shrinks together and you always have little gaps here and there. So I think that is a good start. I now need to draw all of the lines on the back, just how I showed you a moment ago, just with a mechanical pencil. If you haven't got a window template ruler, you can do it English paper piecing, or you can just use a regular ruler to draw 1/4 inch on all the sides. But first of all, let's get this transferred into a cardboard template so that we can then actually decide on a layout, because when we start stitching them, we need them to be stitched in an order that we want. all I'm going to use is a recycled paper bag, but anything you've got that will fit this on. So you want to give yourself a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. You can get little things that you put on your pencils that will do that for you, but I'm just going to eyeball it very carefully with this Sharpie. My stocking is a bit thicker here, but I'm not adding anything there at the top, so I don't need to account for that, so just keep going up. And I would say that's quite a nice shape for a stocking. I think stocking shape's quite a personal thing. I see them quite a lot with really arched or really elongated boots, but I quite like this shape. So all I'm going to do is rough cut it out, and then when I come to trace it I will cut it out exactly, but I don't need it exact now. So this includes the 1/4 inch seam. So actually, should I cut it? I think I'll cut it out exact now, because we've got the seam allowance included in this, haven't we? Well, I suspect that I'm going to be fiddling about with that layout for quite some time to make sure I get as much fussy cut pictures in there as I can, whilst maintaining a random and scrappy effect. Scrappy always takes a little bit longer, doesn't it? Of course, I'll show you how to do the hand piecing as well, in case you've never done that before, but there are more in-depth tutorials on my page, which I'll leave the link to in the description. Now, I did get a little bit carried away and I sewed the whole panel. I've got one hexagon left and I'll demonstrate to you with that hexagon how to sew it together. But it was my birthday yesterday and we just had a really nice chill day at home and I sat and sewn them. My only regret, and I didn't realise till I took a picture today, that I've got 2 stockings right there. But that stocking is on the edge, so you might not notice it as much. But it's a great one for all of your little scraps. So once you've got this panel assembled, we'll then start the construction. So let me show you how to sew this last hexagon on first though. So as you can see, the hand piecing is a great way to not have your stitches shown. If you don't like your stitches showing with English paper piecing, perhaps the hand piecing is the way to go. So I'm just going to use a little bit of thread for this because we only need to sew it on to 2 sides, which is there and there. So all you need to do is take your piece. I like to put it there so I can make sure I'm putting it in the right orientation. Fold it down so that it's right sides together and line up this corner, and then what you need, and then take a pin and put it through the corner of the markings on the opposite corner and feed it through, and make sure that you're matching on the back. As you can see there, I'm not actually in the corner, so just adjust your pin so it's in the corner. And then with your threaded needle, go into the corner. Some people start a little bit in from the corner, but I like to do straight into the corner so that I can make sure that I'm actually in that corner. So then all you do is a running stitch, a very, very small running stitch, as small as you can get them. So I just take a small back stitch and then I just do a running stitch all the way across, and I'm flipping it over to check that I'm coming up on the line. So you are doing a bit of back and forth in. You can just check periodically if you prefer. And then as you come to the edge, you're going to take that pin out and take a stitch right into the corner. So as you can see there, I've got quite a few stitches on my needle, but you can just do a couple or just one at a time when you first start. Don't pull your stitches too tight, it'll bunch up. So make sure you're keeping it flush, and then take a back stitch there just to lock that nice and securely. You fold out your piece and then you just rotate it round and pin in the far corner. See there, I haven't come up in the corner. So there we go. So the difference here, compared to English paper piecing, with EPP you can just roughly cut out your fabric and then wrap it around the cardboard, but you can't really do that here, because to help me matching this line up, I'm actually matching this top edge of the fabric, because I cut it with a template. They should all be the same size, so you do have to usually cut with a template with this. You can draw around a template, cut it with scissors or a rotary cutter like I did, but that outside edge is important to help you keep everything accurate and lined up. There we go, and then just do a back stitch and pass your thread through the loop a couple of times. Pull it flush but not overly tight, and then give yourself a little bit of a tail. Oh. And then when it comes to the ironing, it is best to swirl your seams. So what that means, let me show you on this one. So I've already got that seam needs to come this way. So that means that one needs to go down and that needs to go up, and then you just iron that open there just at that bit, but the seams are going either way. So I hope that makes sense. This one I didn't manage to do. Sometimes you get out of sync and you can't quite do it, so just press it to the one side, but as a whole just swirling them open like that. But like I say, I have got some more in-depth tutorials on my page. So now your stocking should be bigger than your template, so just make sure of that. So I think with a little stretching out when I baste it up, it will be fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to baste it onto wadding, and I am just doing it onto wadding rather than also the backing fabric. So it's just 2 layers of a quilt sandwich rather than the usual 3, because the backing will be the lining, so we'll do that afterwards. So just smooth out your patchwork piece. I'm a spray baster, so I'm going to go ahead and spray baste that. Now don't trim it yet, because as we know, when you quilt things, it can shrink, can't it? So we don't want to trim the patchwork yet, and before we trim in at all, we need to do a stitch around the edge to secure everything. So no trimming yet, quilt as desired. Just using scraps of wadding, you know, the bits that you trim off the edges of your quilt. So yeah, good for scraps all round. You also need to prep the rear of the stocking, so that's going to be quilted as well in my case. Doesn't have to be for you. There's a few things you need to remember. This is going to be the reverse image. So if the front of your stocking is cut with the fabric up this way, the back is going to be a mirror image. So what I like to do to avoid confusion is just put your fabric the correct way down, so as it will appear on the stocking, so inside out. Cut it from the back. Let me sort this out. Just to double check you're cutting it correct, your patchwork panel is up, that's the correct orientation. The back is down, that's also the correct orientation. I'm just going to opt to quilt mine on the machine, and I'm thinking diagonally through the lines, and I'll try and match it somehow on the back. But can you see I've roughly cut those both to the same direction, but you see how they're a mirror image of each other. So don't cut your backing fabric. The same will apply to the lining as well, so just need to be careful of that because we could end up wasting a little bit of fabric. So yes, I think I'm going to go diagonally through all of the hexagons, so I might mark it out with a little bit of a hair marker or something, just so I get the lines nice and straight. So that's my quilting done. So for the quilting on the front, I used this kind of warm grey. It's coming up a little bit darker, but it does very nicely match the background colours on those, and it blends in even with the green, doesn't it? Now put the template back over the top, line everything up. You can pin it if you want to and draw around the template, because what we're going to do now is take this over to the machine and stitch on this line, or just very slightly in from the line. Yeah, let's say 1/16 of an inch inside this line, because this line is then going to be the line that you cut out. So you don't need to do this on the back unless your back is also patchwork. This is just to secure seams, and also it's going to give you an idea of if you've got enough seam allowance everywhere. Looks like I should have, because even there at the very bottom, that's still less than 1/4 of an inch gap. So don't worry too much if you've got a few gaps, as long as they are less than 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. For example here, that's going to be less than 1/4 of an inch. Same here, there's no point sewing another hexagon onto there, so just stitch all the way along this line with a short stitch, and that will get everything secured for you. And then it's just a case of cutting on the line. Try not, if your stitching is like on the line a little bit, try not to cut through the stitching, because the stitches are just securing all of your patchwork together. So just cut on the line that you drew. Now your back panel, again, unless it's patchwork, there's no need to stitch inside the line. Just draw the line and cut on the line, because you don't need to secure any of the seams on the back. But this would look really nice if it was hexagons front and back. If any of you also make this stocking with any of your Christmas leftovers, upload a photo to Instagram and tag me. It's Stitch with Rachel with full stops in between. Stitch with Rachel, full stops in between, but it's all linked down in the description box. So just carefully cut this out and do the same with your back panel, and then we will select our lining fabric, cut that out in the exact same way. And now the most satisfying part, when you've cut it all out, clip it together and stitch it together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The lining, if you sew it with a slightly bigger seam allowance, because then you won't have like excess lining inside. And I've chosen a solid fabric for my lining. I cut both the layers out at the same time, so I wouldn't have any issues with have I placed the lining in the correct direction. They're both just straight on top of each other, and I can turn them the other way out and it doesn't matter. So you don't need to leave any type of opening, you just stitch all the way around. I've just realised the error of my way. They have to be right sides together. I was literally just about to stitch that. Right, so they need to go like that, because you need to turn the stocking the correct way. Seams are hidden on the inside and covered by the lining, so your seams don't go on the outside. That was very close. Does a single video of mine pass where I don't make a fundamental mistake? I didn't make the mistake that time, caught myself just in the nick of time. Second attempt. Just make sure you backstitch at the beginning and end. And then with a nice sharp pair of scissors, just clip into the curves, not into your stitches, but just make some little clips into the curves, and that will help everything lay really nice. So, rinse and repeat with the lining. Next part, you do need access to your machine so that you can get something completely round the machine. My machine's off, let me turn it on. So for me, that's removing the extension table, or you might have like accessory trays on either side that you need to remove, but to have something where you can remove it, because we need to stitch around the circumference of the stocking, so being able to insert that is going to really help. Just while the machine's powering up, this machine, she'll make a little tingy ting in a moment, a little song. She has quite a big like power box. Yeah, I might need to make like a pocket or something to put that in. I don't want to put it down on the floor. I do like having it behind the machine. There she goes. So yeah, I might make a little pocket or something, because I don't want that catching and looking funny in the videos. So all we're going to do now is clip everything around the top, and then with 1/8 of an inch you can increase the stitch length a little bit to almost be a basting stitch, because you're going to put binding on the top. So I'm going to put my stitch length to 3.5. I usually do 4 when I'm quilting. So just going fairly close to the edge and just stitching all the way around, and all you have to do is just keep adjusting that as you go. I think I'm definitely going to have to make another of these, because this one is hopefully going to be in the hands of one of you. So just also check that your lining is down. My lining is really nice and snug. It's not excess or anything. I probably sewed it with maybe a 3/8 of an inch seam. I really love how it's turned out. So now we need to do the binding for the top. You see how that left you with no raw edges, because otherwise you'd have to bind all the way around, inside or out, and you would have had to make bias binding. So all we've got to do here is do straight binding straight across the top. I'm just going to trim all of my loose threads. So I've cut my usual 2.5 inch strip. I measured how wide it was. Mine has an 8 inch across opening, so I've cut 20 inches just to give myself some extra room. So I'm going to do the usual, fold it in half, sew it to the front of the bag, and then flip it to the back. Flip it to the back, and I think I'll hand sew it at the back just to give a really nice finish. But we also need to do the hanging tag, and I think I'll cut the hanging tag from the same piece of fabric. I've not planned my hanging tag. I'm going to put it on this side here on the side seam, and I'm probably going to do it, I think I'll cut it at 4 inch, then it'll be folded in half, so I'm going to do it 4 inch by 1.5 inch, and we'll just have a look, see if that measurement comes out any good. Put my glasses on, I don't want to cut it wrong. So what we essentially need to do is fold it in half, then fold it in half again, so that we've got something that looks like that. So you're folding it in half and then folding the edges into the middle, folding it up. You don't need to worry about these raw edges, because you'll, once it's pressed, fold it in half, and you do need to stitch down there, but fold it in half and that will be inside the raw edge. Now I'm looking at it and thinking that isn't long enough, is it? Because if we're going to lose about that much, it's going to be very close. Let me get my stocking that I used as the template. So this one is on the front edge, and oh, it's a lot bigger. So that's cut at 3 inches. The width is about the same, so let's do that. 1.5 by 3 inch. No, 1.5 by 5 inch. Because folded in half, it'll finish. No, that's still not right. So this one finishes at 2.5, so it is 5 inches that way plus 1/2 inch into the seam allowance. I'm going to cut it at 6 inch. Better to cut it too long and be able to cut it down. That's going to look a lot better, because you're going to lose quite a bit in the seam allowance and things. So let me get those things prepped. So once you've prepared your little strap, you want it to look like this. So let's just have a look. That's 3/8 of an inch by 6 inch finish size. Fold it in half, create a nice loop, and position it wherever you want it to be positioned. So just pin it in place outside of where you're going to stitch. So there you go, and then just start stitching your binding. And I'm not going to pin the binding or anything, but I am going to start on the back, so that that's where my join will be. It'll just make for a cleaner finish on the front. Okay, so I'm going to go that way. So I'm going to leave myself quite a nice bit of tail. Just make sure, yeah, I've got enough. So leave myself a nice bit of a tail to join, and then just the normal way that you do binding, a nice 1/4 inch seam. So then fold your binding to the inside, and then you'll just stitch it however you want to, whether you want to machine stitch it or stitch it by hand. I think I'm going to stitch it by hand just to get a really nice finish, and then take off your side piece, and that's what your hang up will look like. Adorable. I've got a lot of threads here coming out from underneath my binding. I think where I've messed about doing the join, I've got a lot of threads, so let me just snip everything off. I don't want to turn the stocking inside out to stitch the binding, because I think I'll mess up the lining. The lining is in a good position at the moment. I have really enjoyed making this. We've had a couple of really rainy days here, so I've just been stitching the patchwork one day, and then today, when it was just tipping it down, nothing else to do, I spent the afternoon in the sewing room sewing this up. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to the channel. In a couple of weeks I'll be updating you once I start the hand quilting at the beginning of December on the Christmas quilt. I've still not finished all of the blocks, but I'm still working away at them. And of course, if you want to see any of the other things that I've been getting up to recently, you can pop on over to my Patreon page, which is a members page where I share extra videos every week on the things that I'm making and what I'm getting up to. So thank you so much for watching. You take care and happy stitching. Bye.